Okay. So we want to talk about weight painting a little bit. I do expect the bind to look good for this assignment. So I'll show you some of the tools and what to look out for. Okay, so I'm just going to set up some kind of start pose for the wrist and for the fingers. You want to make sure that you are painting with a pose, at least one pose, right? So you can use your set German keys, do something like this. Just try to pose something natural, something that your character's going to be doing a lot. It's my set German key is on my wrist.
Can I do that?
Sure, yeah, that's no
Because
problem.
I did that already.
Yeah, he's not gonna be flipping the bird. I know you're thinking. But... Okay, so I'll work off this pose. As long as I've got auto key on, I'm going to hide my NURBS so I can see. Just make sure that I'm still recording. And we'll just take a look. So it looks like I missed zeroing something out here. Okay, so I'll paint off of this. So let's take a look at the menus that come up. Now, first off, to get to your weight painting, I don't even really like to go up to skin and paint skin weights. It's too slow. So I'm gonna click on my mesh. I'm gonna hold right click and go to paint skin weights tool. Okay. Now, once this comes up, it'll give you an index of all your joints that are influencing your mesh. Yours might look like this right now, if you haven't opened this menu before. I don't like this look to weight painting. I find it too hard to see what's happening, so I use the color ramp. What is the color ramp displaying? You know, it's kind of cold colors to hot colors to white is your 0 to 1. So there's no influence from the cup joint down here. There's a lot of influence for the cup joint in here. Nothing's 100% right now for it. If I select another joint, which I can do by actually hovering over it and holding right click, here we have the root joint, and where it's all white here, it's 100%. Now, your brush tool might be set to like something like replace by default. What you're probably going to be using most of the time is the add brush with some amount of opacity and value. So if it's 1 and 1, that means you're just painting on 100%. You're blanketing it out completely white, 100% to the root joint, which means wherever the root joint moves, these vertices will move with it. As it kind of fades away, there's less influence from the root joint. Into the next joint here, the wrist, you can see high dependency on the wrist up here, lower dependency here. So for something like skin, you'll probably want to bring these values down so that you're not painting too much too quickly. When you get into areas that are kind of bone dense, like the knuckles, you could paint this 100% to the bone underneath it, this knuckle, to make it just look rigid. Replace kind of works like an eraser if you were to set the value down to 0, but it's not very intuitive where it sends those dependencies. These are influences. So if I were to erase a bunch on the back of this hand, it might say, okay, you don't want it on the back of the hand, so let's put it on the thumb. Well, I don't really want that on the thumb. That doesn't make a lot of sense. Maya just takes a best guess. Okay. Erasing can be what you want to do to fill out, you know, to get rid of some small influences here and there, but you don't really want to depend on it. Typically what you want to do is you want to work from your topmost joint, so your root to your wrist to maybe your thumb, your index knuckle. You want to work down the chain. And you want to paint over areas to give it, you know, more dependency for the next joint that you've chosen. So I'll show you an example here. If I click on maybe my thumb joint 1, okay? So it's done an okay job figuring out where the thumb is starting to take influences from, right here. But if I wanted this to be more bulky looking, I can add some influence from my thumb joint 1, and you'll just learn from experience what will make something look more collapsed or more bulky. It's the rotation that the joints have moved on. So this has kind of come up. So if I say, yeah, I want this to rely more on the thumb joint 1, I want this mesh, part of the mesh, to come up more. So I'm going to bring this maybe 50-50. I'm going to hold down B on my keyboard and left click and drag for a higher brush size. As you can see, the thumb is just gaining a little bit of mass. There's no subtract. You can only replace. There is some other tools in here, but I've just bulked up the thumb. You can see now it looks like it's got hulking muscles in there. If I decide, you know what, this is too quick of a change, I want to smooth this out, all I need to do is hold shift, and that replaces the need to go over to this shift tool. See, now it's the white has disappeared.
You got it anyway.
Yeah. It's sticky keys is turning on. Be careful there.
What the hell? I'm not even holding shit.
Yeah, that's if you tap shift 5 times. It's- Now, watch what happens here. I'm holding shift and I'm trying to smooth out this area. It jumps up. Why the hell did it do that? Let's find out. What Maya's done is it's taken these influences that I smoothed. They used to be at 100% white, meaning that it would follow the thumb. Now they're following something else. So it might be the wrist. Nope. Might be the cup. A little bit of the pinky. So that makes no sense. Yeah, it looks like it just distributed it a little bit to thumb 4. Yada, yada, yada. It's kind of a mess, right? So it's done something kind of stupid because there's joints close to this as I was painting. So what can I do about this? Well, I could just paint over it, or I could use another tool. And this is probably going to be one of the only kind of tools I'll show you guys for this. Actually, no, there's 2. So if I click on my vertexes and click on this troublesome one, or if I had more than one that was being troublesome, I can go over to skin, and there's a tool called hammer skin weights. What that does is it looks at the weights around the vertice that you have selected and averages the vertice to those. So I click on it and it just figures out this, and it makes it an average. Another one that you can use, which can make things look a little bit too soft at times, is in the same spot. If I go to skin, smooth skin weights, this is new, and it's kind of like relax. I don't rely on this one too much.
So didn't you do that? Did you change the shape? But that choice did affect that mesh and the paint.
So this is changing. This will change what joints affect that vertice.
Oh, yeah.
It's gonna find another solution to that. So the smooth did a pretty good job there, I must say. Now you can smooth large amounts of the mesh at once if you want. Like if I wanted to smooth out, say, this edge loop, I could do that, but I don't like what that's gonna do there at all. So let's say I want to make this, that made it look really gummy. Let's say I want to make this look more stiff. What I'll typically do is I'll select my mesh, the faces. I'll hold control and right click, and I'll go two vertices. I know that one's kind of a long list. And then I'll go to my paint skin weights tool, and I'll find the joint that I do want to affect this area. So right here, I can hold right click and go select influences, and I'll use this flood button. Flood. And that's a quick way to add a bunch of influences to an area. So something like the fingertip, which might be a little bit collapsed right now. Let's take a look at the pinky. I think I fixed this one video ago, so might not be able to again. Say something like here. We're getting quite a bit of collapsing in here. So I'll select this group of polys, go to my vertices, and what selecting the vertices is doing is acting like a mask. And then I'll select this joint, and you can see it's only orange and red in here. I want it to be stiffer looking, so I'll flood it. That's typically how I weight paint when I'm weight painting with Maya's default tools. I'd rather see a little bit of overlap than things looking gummy. Gummy doesn't look good. Gummy meaning, I'll show you what gummy would be. So something like this. See, it's really starting to lose its form. It's starting to look gummy and soft.
Like Gumby, like a character?
That's what we want to avoid. Yeah, like Gumby, or like it's made out of like some kind of like saran wrap or something. Okay. So that's some of the tools. I'd like you to go in and get comfortable with these tools. You can explore how they work. There's some advanced features in here you don't need to worry about too much, like copying and pasting to other influences and things like that. The scale tool could be kind of cool if you want to play around with that. Basically, anything that's here that you have selected for this influence, you can scale it up. So if I say the value should be I need to set the max to like 1.2. I set the value to 1.2 here. It's gonna multiply what I have by 1.2. So it's kind of weird. It's kind of a hard one to get used to, but it's good for kind of keeping a little bit of the weight painting like direction that you have, but just adding to it. I don't use it that often. It can be kind of hard to select your joints once they get really dense in there. Okay. You too, Liz. Okay, so this is our first take on weight painting. So try to make sure to save often. It's really easy to ruin your mesh really quick if you make a mistake. Undoing isn't always so kind in weight painting. I'll have to tell you that now. So save often. Take it in kind of like a planned out direction, going from the topmost part of the hierarchy down through the thumb, eventually the tip of the thumb, through the hand, the cup joint, the fingers to the fingertips. You just keep moving from big to small and try to tighten it up in a couple poses. You should do okay. All right? Thanks, guys.